Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of HPA Global Insights. Today, let's welcome our friend Ellen Schutt, Managing Director of the Global Organization for EPA and DHA Omega-3s, otherwise known as GOED. God, that's a long thing to say.
It is a long thing.
Ellen, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing well, doing well. So we haven't done one of these in a while. Let's catch up and then kind of go over some things that you guys been up to. I guess a good thing would be just to start with, what have you guys been up to this year, 2025 at GoEd?
Yeah, it's been a busy year. I can't believe it's the end of the year already. I think I say that every year, but this year we have actually we've grown pretty over the last several years. We've grown pretty significantly in our membership. So now we have 215 or 216 members, throughout the supply chain and around the world. So we're living up to our global name. So it's been a good couple of years in terms of growth. And this year, I'd say we've been focused on two major projects. The first is a scientific consensus panel, and the goal of that is to bring together scientific experts to analyze the science, to have a definitive number connected to what an intake recommendation should be for healthy adults. So this is something we've been working on since really the beginning of the year, and we are at the tail end of being able to say the number. We don't have it yet, but to say this is what we believe the science supports for an intake recommendation. As you probably know, there's no DRI in the US and Canada. There's a variety of different intake recommendations around the world, but we wanted to have something that we felt like was based on all the science that we could find and analyze. And the goal is to publish this in a peer-reviewed journal early next year, and then to launch it more publicly at the American Society for Nutrition conference next summer. So this is an exciting initiative. And then once this is out there, then we want to be able to go talk to policymakers and healthcare practitioners, et cetera, to get the word out about this. So that's the one
Okay.
project. And then the other big project is we commissioned a consulting company to do a life cycle assessment white paper. So it's not a life cycle assessment of any fishery or any omega-3 source, but it's a white paper to help our members and to help the industry understand what a good white paper looks like across sources. There's a lot of conversations about fish not being sustainable, which is not the case for omega-3 fisheries. Some are saying my source is better than your source. So we really want to be able to have an independent body saying, here's the things you should look at when you're trying to analyze a particular omega-3 source. And that's something that will also be published early next year.
Okay. Let's step back a little bit. And the first thing you mentioned, I just want, in case people aren't aware, now your membership is growing quite a bit. You've got a lot of members. Of that membership, you've got dietary supplement finished product kind of brands, and you've got the manufacturers that actually manufacture the omega-3s. And you have other members as well, like actual fisheries, and so you also cover uh, like fish meal and things like that as well, or
No, we have so we do have fisheries. The Peruvian anchovy fishery is the largest fishery that supplies dietary supplements, and so we have the major fishing companies in Peru as members of
oh,
GOED.
okay.
These are the same companies that are selling fish meal. I mean, that's the main reason they're harvesting the anchovies for the fish meal. The fish oil is actually a byproduct, but they're
Mhm.
selling fish meal and fish oil. But we're not involved in the fish meal business, and we're also not involved in aquaculture, which is really a big competitor to the dietary supplement industry in terms of who's going to buy this crude fish oil coming from Peru. But so yeah, so we're really just covering fish oil, and we have the crude oil, the fishing companies. We have the companies that are further processing the oil into something that's a higher concentrate or a different value proposition. And then yes, we have the dietary supplement brands on store shelves. And right now we have more than 30% of our membership is brands, which is something that was one of
Okay.
our goals over the last 5 years.
So has that been the biggest part of your membership growth?
Brands and Asia. And those were two
Okay.
focus areas for us because we felt like we were weaker in Asia. And I know obviously you have a big China focus. China is a huge market, a growing market.
Sure.
Everyone's interested in understanding China. And we wanted to make sure we were supporting Chinese members and supporting our other members who are interested in understanding that market better.
Okay, cool. So I was going to ask you this later, but just since you were talking about these research papers and stuff like that, I know that there's you guys did, then there's other groups too track like the omega-3 levels in blood, and there's a lot of connection to all the health benefits of taking omega-3s um, has been correlated to what levels are actually present in blood. How are we doing on that across the globe?
Well, let me share my screen because the answer is not great still, even though I feel like we've made a lot of progress. But this is a screenshot from a scientific article that we commissioned that was published last year. And this was updating a paper that was published back in 2016, looking at blood levels of EPA and DHA. And this paper we were able to get more information from more countries, but the situation didn't really change very much. You can see here, we're talking now in the United States and we're looking at China. I mean, China's a little better than the US if you look at the percentages at the bottom. The goal is to be more than 8% omega-3 index or blood levels, and you can see there's not a lot of green on this map. So
Yeah.
80% of the world's population is still not getting enough, even 250 milligrams. So a pretty low dose of omega-3s. It's just they're not getting it.
Mm.
So my job is secure. We still have a lot of work to do.
And I would imagine China is the coastal cities skew that whole thing because they just eat so much seafood. When you go to
Mhm.
those coastal cities in China, that's all you're getting is a lot of seafood and fish and things like that.
Well, right. I mean, you look at, I mean, turned off my slide, but you look at Japan. I mean, Japan is green because they do eat so much fish, although I've heard that the Japanese are starting to eat more of a Western diet, so they're not necessarily as healthy as they used to be.
Oh, yeah, just blame us.
Yeah.
Um, so since we're on that, we just mentioned China a few times in sentences there. You recently went to China for a few different engagements and meetings with different members and potentials, things like that. How did that go? Tell us a little bit about that.
It was good. So we were there in June. For about 10 days, we went to see some of our members, as you said, in different parts of China. And the Food Ingredients or Health Ingredients China show was during that time. So we participated in that with a sponsored session, just talking again about benefits of omega-3s, what's going on in the industry, some misconceptions in the market. And I did some myth busting about things you see on a label or things you hear being said about a product that aren't necessarily 100% accurate. So we're trying to, be the educators here. But we also spoke at a different conference that was more, you mentioned the Peruvians, the fish meal and fish oil, more the early part of the supply chain, to kind of educate them about omega-3s because they're not selling fish oil thinking about dietary supplements. So it was interesting for them to learn what our world is all about.
Hmm.
And so yeah, that we had some interesting conversations about what the American consumer thinks and what the Chinese consumer thinks, different from each other.
Yeah, I think just with my extended family over there and having lived there for a long time, just hearing, I think a lot of just regular consumers that aren't, really big deep into the health scene yet, just the word in Chinese, they just fish oil clumps everything in there. Everything is
Mhm.
fish oil. It doesn't, there's no
Right.
real distinction. The next level up there is obviously the wording of omega-san, which is the omega-3. A lot of people will say that, but and like you said, I don't think most people really know the difference
Well, right. I
in
can
throwing
actually,
those terms around.
since you brought that up, I can share this slide with you because we did a presentation kind of on what consumers know. Oops. What consumers know in the US and in China. And let me back up because so in the US, we did a survey earlier this year with Nutrition Business Journal looking at what the US consumer knows and doesn't know about omega-3s. And I know this might be a little small, but if you look at the very bottom of the infographic about omega-3 knowledge gaps, the American consumer doesn't know the difference between algae, fish oil, flaxseed
Krill.
oil, krill,
Yeah.
walnuts, they don't know EPA versus DHA versus ALA. Like they can't answer, I think I have a slide on that. They can't answer which is which and whether it contains EPA and DHA. So this was a big learning for us in the US. And then if you look at China, you see a very similar story that they're talking about omega-3s, but they're showing pictures of different seed oils or
Yeah,
walnuts. So it's all getting lumped together.
sure.
And it's a problem, I think, in most geographies, but it's, there's ALA is good for you, but ALA doesn't have the science and all the benefits that EPA and DHA have, and it's hard to get EPA and DHA if you're not eating fish. So it's important that we try and do educating to educate the consumers about the differences.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting, really interesting. Walnuts, yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. Yep.
Living in China, everyone, oh, you want to be smart, eat walnuts.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I hadn't heard that before, but yeah, it makes
Yeah,
sense that yeah,
the
what
brain.
the claims are interesting, what gets connected and how they describe the benefits of omega-3s in the Chinese market because it's all many of the companies have the brands have the same claims and it's very broad. It's about being smart, about being able to work better because you're taking omega-3s and you have more energy. Like it's very different. I have a slide on that too. It's different lifestyle type of claim language compared to these are two US examples of it's a heart health market or
Mhm.
it's different. It's not necessarily talking about the more lifestyle oriented concerns.
Yeah, I mean, here we have more of a option, I think, for brands to kind of target their product, for joint health, inflammation,
Mhm.
brain development, eye health. I mean, there's so many different avenues you can go down to try to, promote your product.
Right, right, right. Yeah, very, very different markets.
All right, so Ellen, overall, in general, how's the market doing? What's going on in the overall market of omega-3s?
We just talked about China, which leads to a conversation about tariffs, which I guess is not just a Chinese thing. It's a global, it's a US thing, and it's impacting the entire globe. And I think we've had a lot of questions this year, a lot of conversations about tariff codes and what's going to change. And from day to day, it's a different story. So I think that the biggest challenge on a macroeconomic scale has been the uncertainty. And how do you make business decisions if you don't know what you're going to be paying, tomorrow or next month? So I think that's been a challenge for all of our members, kind of in every country. And it's been hard for GOED to help because we don't always understand. Well, of course, we don't know what's going to happen next, and to understand all the different tariff codes, it's different from country to country. So that I think has been very challenging. But if I look at the omega-3 category specifically, it's been a good year. We mentioned Peru already, and the Peruvian anchovy fishery is the fishery that everybody's watching because that's where most of the oil comes from for the supplement industry. And so, I mean, 2023 they had a really bad year. They didn't open the fishery because of for a good reason. There were too many babies, juveniles, and so they didn't want to risk the future of the fishery, and so they didn't have a fishing season. So a good sustainability story, not a good story for supply and demand.
Mm.
So now this year they had a very good first season in terms of how much fish oil they caught, but the profile of amount of EPA and DHA wasn't what they're typically looking for in 18% EPA, 12% DHA. It was more balanced. So a different type of fish oil that makes it harder for use in the supplement industry. But it was still a good volume of fish. And now the second season is going on right now, and it's a smaller quota, but the profiles are better. So at the end of the day, all of this means that there's a good amount of fish oil available. But I will say that the industry needs to diversify their sources. And this is a message that we've really been trying to get out there. When there was no fish oil available from Peru, companies looked for other sources, and whether it's algae or krill or a different sardine oil or a different oil. But then once Peru was back, they kind of went back to Peru, and this is not good for the long-term success of the industry. Demand is growing. There's ups and downs in these natural resources, and all sources really need to be considered for the future to make this a sustainable industry from a business perspective. And so this is
Mhm.
something that we keep talking about, and hopefully people listen.
Do you think that return back once it open up, is it just because of the costs? Is it that
Well,
I
it's
would
cost.
assume.
Yeah, it's cost, yes, but it's also the other oils. If you're looking for the starting point of per, like the industry is built on an 1812 oil and then
Sure.
concentrations from there. So if you're starting from an oil that isn't that, it's more work to get it to fit into what you're looking for in your product.
Okay. Sure.
So, and algae, everyone wants to talk about algae. Algae is growing, but algae is a really, really, really small part of the market. So it's going to be a very long time before there's enough algae to totally replace fish oil, and it's more expensive. So, we think algae is great. We think it should be an option, but there, people need to consider all the options and make some good long-term decisions.
Yeah. And the algae, most of that is focused more on the DHA part of it, isn't it? I mean, I know there is EPA, but
There's not a lot of EPA, right? Most of it is DHA, and I think that also is it's hindering the success of algae broadly because the science is on both EPA and DHA, other than infant nutrition. So you need, I think, the future of algae needs to include both EPA and DHA. And there's some EPA, and there's more under development, so I'm
sure.
optimistic, but it's just not there yet.
And then I in my mind anyways, the other part of that would be the krill, right? That would be the
Hmm.
kind of next one. And they have their own kind of lot of bodies overseeing that harvesting, and
Right. In,
they
in
seem to have a
Canada.
lot of control over that.
They do, and it's an MSC certified fishery. CAMLR has oversight into what's going on in Antarctica, and I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but it's less than 1% of a particular area where they're allowed to catch krill. So,
Yep.
it's they end up being a focus unfairly of NGOs or other organizations that are saying, oh, you're killing the whales, you're starving the penguins, and it's just not true.
Mm,
But it's that emotional story that someone hears that and they're not listening to the facts and not understanding what's really happening there. So yeah, krill
yeah.
is, I mean, it is a really solid omega-3 source that's sustainably harvested, and that's a message that we definitely want to get out there.
Yeah, I think people don't, I mean, although they're very tiny, the biomass of that krill nation is huge.
Huge. Right,
And
right.
they're just taking a very, very tiny part of it.
Mhm.
Um, on that note of kind of technology, is there any new dosage formats or any kind of formats out there? I mean, the soft gel has been king and probably remains so,
Mhm.
because it is difficult, as we talked before we filmed this, taking oil and putting it into, other formats. But is there anything new out there that's interesting?
Yeah, soft gels are still king. I know broadly in the supplement industry, gummies are growing more, but the challenge with gummies is being able to fit an efficacious dose into a little gummy. I would say the one technology that I think has gotten a very good amount of traction is these soft chews, which is the company is Concord. The technology is Concordix, which is one of our member companies. But I have a picture I can share that because it's different. If you haven't seen one of these. They're different than what here? Sorry. They're different than a gummy or a tip. Like it's just a different form. So this
Sure.
is so it's a soft chew. I've tasted them. They taste well, it depends on the formulation, but they can taste very good, and you can fit a good dose in it. Yeah, I think that there's one on the market that's 180 milligrams or something like that, maybe 200 milligrams. So it's very hard to get something like that in just what's a typical gummy. And this has a lot of potential, and this isn't just an omega-3 technology. It's available for other ingredients as well, and I think that they've done a really good job of getting traction in the market.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very cool. I'll have to check those out.
Yeah, yeah, you should taste some of them.
Um, so let's wrap this up and talk about GOED's future for 26. What do you guys got going on?
Well, this consensus panel recommendation is going to consume a lot of our time once the recommendation is published, and we need to make a plan for how we're going to talk to, again, I mentioned earlier, policymakers and HCPs, and do we go to brands and say, why don't you put this number on your packaging, and let's connect the dots for if it's 400 milligrams or 500 milligrams. Here's what that means for health. So that's a big project that we'll be focusing on next year. And the other thing that I always like to talk about is our GOED Exchange event, which we do every 2 years. And the next one is in Singapore in March 17th to 19th. And we purposely picked Singapore, or we purposely picked Asia because, as I mentioned earlier, that's where the growth is. We want to kind of cater to our Asian members and make it a little easier for them to attend this event. So we're hoping that we get good support from the different Asian countries in which we're involved. But yeah, would love to see as many people that are interested in omega-3s to join us in Singapore.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, Asia in general, just for the supplement market alone, is a um, huge industry, and it's just, but it's,
Yeah.
I think that I don't know. I think they stay in China. Tend to stay at home more. So, I mean, they go to a lot of the shows and everything, but they're very slow, China companies to start to integrate into the whole global, kind of associations and all these type of things.
Yeah, I mean, we heard that Chinese like to come to Singapore, so we're hoping that that's a bit of a draw. But yeah, the goal of having it there is to have more Chinese be able to come. And obviously, we have a big Korean segment of our membership too in
Hmm.
Japan. And so, yeah, we
Yeah,
want
it
to
should
make
be
sure
great.
we're
This should be
meeting that
really
gap.
good. Yeah, I'll throw the date and time up there on the screen for everybody. Ellen, I'll let you go. Thank you
Okay.
so much for your time and going over everything with us. That's very cool.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for inviting me and have a wonderful holiday. And can't believe it's the end of the year.
Yeah, it came up fast this year, that's for sure. And my son's grown. He's taller than my wife now. Time goes by so quickly. All right. Well,
So,
Ellen, good to see you.
you too.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to HPA Global Insights. Please like, subscribe, and share with your colleagues. Any questions or suggestions, please email us at info@hpachina.org. HPA Global Insights is a nonprofit organization focused on the overall global dietary supplement industry. Please consider joining the association and supporting its endeavors. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, take care.